program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult, if not impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Thursday, May the 7th, 2026. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy
and Ken Drost. And opening the front page, Trump flexes his muscles in Indiana. Primary vote punctuates his power over the GOP. Susan Page, the Washington bureau chief for USA Today, writes, "He's still the boss. President Donald Trump is beset by rising gas prices, falling approval ratings, and an unpopular war in Iran. But in the Indiana primary, May 5th, he demonstrated his continued grip on the Republican Party by delivering a thumping to a half-dozen state senators who defied his demands to redraw congressional lines. Out of 7 GOP senators who earned his ire, 5 lost their party's nominations to challengers the president had endorsed, with one race still too close to call. Now, it was an unlikely test, and an expensive one, in contests that typically attract little attention. Trump is perhaps not as popular in my district as he once was. Spencer Deary, one of the incumbent senators, told CNN while the votes were being counted. But he still is overwhelmingly popular. Good luck to those great Indiana Senate candidates who are running against people who couldn't care less about our country or about keeping the majority in Congress." Trump posted on Truth Social earlier in the day, "Let's see how those rhinos do tonight," a reference to so-called Republicans in name only. The primary stakes for the Indiana state legislature, solidly red no matter what, were relatively low. The campaigns turned less on policy differences than on fealty to Trump. Now that means Tuesday's returns are likely to reinforce the reluctance of most Republican officials to publicly split with Trump, whatever his travails. His command of his own party, especially over Republican members of a compliant Congress, has been the main source of his ability to levy tariffs, wage war, and redesign Washington's landscape with little challenge or oversight. Now, that said, things could change in the midterm elections in November, when Democrats are considered likely to gain control of the House of Representatives and score gains in the U.S. Senate. Now, over the next 2 weeks, Trump will face more challenges in other Republican primaries. In Louisiana's primary, May 16, the U.S. Senate candidate Trump endorsed, Julia Letlow, was boosted by his backing, but remains locked in a 3-way race. Trump's target, Republican incumbent Bill Cassidy, still could make a runoff. In polls for Kentucky's May 19 primary, the House challenger Trump endorsed, Navy SEAL veteran Ed Galrain, trails incumbent Republican Representative Thomas Massie, one of the few congressional Republicans willing to openly challenge Trump. In Georgia's primary, also May 19, the gubernatorial candidate Trump endorsed, Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, trails healthcare CEO Rick Jackson in statewide polls, with support from just 24% of Republican primary voters. Now, by any measure, though, the president remains the loudest voice in the GOP. Republican office holders and hopefuls are still more likely to fret about Trump in private than to criticize him in public. An ABC News Washington Post Ipsos poll, April 24 through 28, found that 85% of Republican voters approved of the job he was doing. That's down a bit, but still healthy. Now, what's more, Republicans, by 2 to 1, 65% to 34% said the GOP should follow Trump's lead not head in a different direction. But just 25% of the independent voters who usually swing competitive elections approve of Trump. Overall, his approval rating was a dismal 37%, 62% disapproval rating. That is the highest of either of his presidential terms. With Indiana, Trump couldn't have chosen a friendlier field for a fight. In the 2024 presidential election, he carried 6 out of the 7 contested state Senate districts over Democrat Kamala Harris in double-digit landslides, including 3 of them by more than 30 percentage points. Trump won the 7th district by 7 percentage points. In Tuesday's primary, only incumbent Greg Good managed to defeat a Trump-backed challenger, Brenda Wilson. 5 of his colleagues lost. Dan Jarnock to Trevor DeVries, Linda Rogers to Brian Schmutzler, Travis Holdman to Blake Fitcher, Jim Buck to Tracy Powell, and Greg Walker to Michelle Davis. In the 7th race, the votes for incumbent Deary and challenger Paula Copenhaver were still being counted. That was an expensive exercise. AdImpact, which tracks spending on campaign ads, estimated that $13.5 million was spent on the Indiana State Senate race this year. That's unfathomably more than in the past election, when spending on the races totaled less than $1 million. Money is the mother's milk of campaigns. And so when you're up against, like in my race right now, 1.3 million, issues were not the topic. And that's what it should have been about, Buck told the Indianapolis Star. Instead, it's retribution for December 11th. That's the date the Indiana State Senate rejected Trump's redistricting push.
Alarms sound as grand plans for fireworks form for the 4th of July. From Carissa Waddick of USA Today. America will mark its milestone birthday this summer with a bang. Quite a few, actually. Ahead of the country's 250th anniversary, firework retailers and pyrotechnicians said that they're seeing surging demand. From coast to coast, communities are preparing giant shows and families are looking to spice up their backyard barbecues. Independence Day is going to be the grandest 4th of July that we've seen in 50 years, said Julie Heckman, Executive Director of the American Pyrotechnic Association, a trade group. Phantom Fireworks, the largest firework chain in the country, has already seen an uptick in traffic and is expecting its greatest sales ever. Vice President Jessica Drago told USA Today everyone's gearing up. But not everyone is excited. Fire officials in drought-stricken western states say the expected uptick in explosions is ratcheting up their anxiety. We are definitely bracing for what could be an unusually busy summer as people celebrate, said California State Fire Marshal Daniel Berlant. Fireworks spark tens of thousands of wildfires across the United States each year, causing deaths, injuries, and millions of dollars in property damage. In mid-April, a blaze tore through more than 10 acres in Lake City, Florida, in the northern part of the state, after embers from a firework ignited dry vegetation. Out west, officials are on an especially high alert. Low winter snowfall and hotter than normal temperatures have set the stage for what's expected to be a dangerously dry summer. Some areas have already begun restricting water usage. A single errant firework ember could smolder acres of land. Chris Brunette, Fire and Life Safety Section Chief for the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control, said the state is very concerned with the dry landscape. While he acknowledged this summer will be drier than most, Brunette said Colorado is used to arid conditions. His team is warning people about which fireworks are off limits and how to dispose of them properly, Anything that shoots off the ground or explodes, like bottle rockets, cherry bombs, and mortars, isn't allowed in the state. But Brunette said he isn't blind to people's desire to celebrate. That's why, hearkening back to the nation's founding era, the state is promoting bucket brigades to limit the damage of illegal fireworks. At the time of the American Revolution, the term referred to the line of colonists who would pass down buckets of water to help quench a neighborhood fire. Colorado is using the term to encourage people to soak spent fireworks in a bucket outside overnight. While people in Colorado are all too aware of the wildfire threats, Brunette said it can be enticing for them to drive to another state and buy illegal fireworks. Most fireworks enter the United States from ports in Southern California. Berlant said he's seen an explosive growth of illegal fireworks pouring into the country in recent years. Most of the explosions and even injuries are from illegal fireworks or the unsafe usage of fireworks, he said. Deaths and injuries related to fireworks skyrocketed last year, with firework-related injuries rising by 52% year over year, according to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. While states determine what types of fireworks they allow, the federal government sets baseline safety standards. In 2025, Berlant's agency confiscated millions of pounds of pyrotechnics that did not meet those requirements, although that wasn't enough. 7 people were killed in a July 1st explosion at an illegal fireworks warehouse in Northern California. In early April, 8 people were charged in connection with the incident. This year, Berlant said fire and law enforcement agencies are working together in California to stop illegal distributors. While education is number one, enforcement of keeping the illegal fireworks off our streets really has been an increased strategy, according to Brunette. Military veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder can experience distress from the sudden, loud bangs and vibrations of fireworks. And with more fireworks than ever expected to dot the night sky across the country this year, some worry there will be fewer ways to avoid such anguish. Passageways, a nonprofit that helps veterans in Kansas, is hosting a 12-hour party for a small group of veterans at an underground salt mine museum. The event will feature barbecue ribs and brisket, games, giveaways, sleeping bags, and notably, no fireworks. In the 600 feet deep cavern, attendees will not be able to hear, feel, or see any of the fireworks above. This is truly the first time they're going to have an escape, Passageways co-founder Jennifer Garrison said. Garrison said she received a phone call from one veteran who had tried everything from earplugs to noise-canceling headphones. After registering for the event, she said he told her, "I don't think I have to suffer this year." It brings to front of mind all the veterans that got us to where we are and everything they've been through so that we can have the freedoms we have, Garrison said.
Memphis in a new civil rights struggle. Black voters say they're fighting a 4-alarm fire. Ndea Yancey Bragg, Jacob Wilt, and Jeremy Redmond of USA Today co-wrote the article. Gina Bariza signaled a mixture of disappointment and defiance as he took shelter from a driving rain inside his polling place at Central Christian Church, right here in the city's Midtown neighborhood. As Bariza cast his ballot in Tennessee's local primary, May 5th, his state's Republican-controlled legislature prepared to redraw the congressional district he calls home. His 9th congressional district includes most of Memphis, one of the largest predominantly black cities in the nation, and is the state's sole remaining Democratic seat in the U.S. House. Home to the National Civil Rights Museum, the city played a major role in the civil rights movement. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis in 1968. The Tennessee legislature's moves follow a U.S. Supreme Court ruling April 29 that threw out a congressional map Louisiana drew to protect the voting power of black residents. The court's 6-3 decision sided with the Trump administration and non-black voters who challenged the map as relying too heavily on race to sort voters. I feel like they're playing dirty, and we expect it. So that's just par for the course, Barzisa said of the GOP efforts to redraw his district's boundaries. Other GOP-led southern states are making similar moves after the court's decision on the landmark 1965 Federal Voting Rights Act, hoping to help Republicans keep control of Congress in the November midterms. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:15. Continuing. Just hours after the court's ruling, Florida's legislature approved a new map that would give Republicans control of 4 more House seats in that state. A day later, Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry issued an executive order delaying his state's House primary election and calling on the state legislature to redraw congressional maps. May 1, Alabama Governor Kay Ivey called for a special legislative session for reviewing congressional district maps. We owe it to Tennesseans to ensure our congressional districts accurately reflect the will of Tennessee voters. This from Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, adding the legislature has a responsibility to review the map and ensure that it remains fair, legal, and defensible. Now, President Trump has called for more states to follow suit, predicting Republicans could pick up more than 20 House seats in the November 3rd midterms. We should demand that state legislatures do what the Supreme Court says must be done, the president posted May 3rd on Truth Social. That is more important than administrative convenience. The next day, Martin Luther King III wrote Tennessee's Republican leaders to urge them not to undo his father's work. A session launched for the sole purpose of dismantling Congressional District 9 is not normal, not fair, King wrote. The resulting disenfranchisement of black voters would run contrary to everything that my father, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., fought for. Now, Memphis has been an epicenter of the struggle over voting rights for African Americans and the civil rights movement more broadly since the 1860s, said Charles McKinney, who teaches history at Rhodes College in Memphis. Now, King, for example, visited Memphis to support a sanitation worker strike in 1968. That same year here, he delivered his famous I've Been to the Mountaintop speech. It happened the night before he was assassinated on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. Memphis is also home to the historic Beale Street Baptist Church, built by freed slaves after the Civil War. The church also housed the newspaper that published some of Ida B. Wells' anti-lynching investigations in the late 19th century. That history, McKinney said, has helped Memphis serve as a bellwether for African Americans nationwide. Now, Memphis has long been the nation's second largest predominantly black city, trailing Detroit for decades by, at times, a razor-thin margin. Now, that's an extended legacy of gains and losses, McKinley said. And so we find ourselves, once again, in this moment of profound setback, this moment of profound loss, moment of literally the forces of segregation, racism, the forces of white supremacy, the forces of anti-blackness, consolidating in such a way that rolls us back 50-plus years. What's different in this moment is that rather than voting rights advocates going on the offensive to secure stronger protections for the black community, they're on the defense, McKinney said, and the stakes couldn't be higher. It's a 4-alarm fire here in Memphis, McKinney said, and in other states as well. Now, those in favor of redistricting the Memphis area congressional district are considering a strategy called cracking, when a community dominated by one political party is split to dilute its voting power, according to Brooke Shannon, who teaches political science at the University of Memphis. The same strategy was used in 2022, she said, when Republican lawmakers split Nashville into 3 districts. The point behind this is to ensure Democratic voters will not get representation in Congress because they will be minorities, Shannon said. Now, it's possible the GOP strategy could backfire, according to Jonathan Servas, an assistant teaching professor at Carnegie Mellon. The term is dummy-mandering, said Servas, who specializes in redistricting. Instead of Democrats winning one district, they might win more than one. U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee has urged the state to redistrict another Republican seat in Memphis. It's essential to cement at real Donald Trump's agenda and the golden age of America, the Republican senator wrote last week in a post on X. Tennessee's Republican leaders sidestepped questions about whether black voting power could be diluted. The governor has asked us to come into special session to take a look at it. That's what we're going to do, according to Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson, a Republican from Franklin. We've got lots of conversations, I suppose. House Speaker Cameron Sexton, a Republican from Crossville, said Tennessee's redistricting process will undergo a comprehensive review with all necessary reforms implemented. Now, not all Republicans are on board with the plan, which would put in place new district lines ahead of the state's congressional primaries in August. I don't think that the people in my district would feel that that's a good use of their tax dollars. This is from Senator Paul Bailey, Republican from Sparta, as he said last week about holding a special legislative session just for redistricting, especially after it had just adjourned. By 9 in the morning, May the 5th, protesters lined the sidewalk near the state capitol in Nashville, holding signs that read, "No Jim Crow 2.0," and "Lee sold out Tennessee." Some reacted angrily as state lawmakers adopted a slate of rules for the special session, including one allowing them to ban protesters that they consider disruptive. They should be ashamed for this clearly racist act that they're about to do, Odessa Kelly, executive director of Stand Up Nashville, former Democratic congressional candidate, shouted as she exited the committee room. But we're going to show up anyway. Let our voices be heard. The crowd surged outside to join a Democratic caucus rally on the steps of the Capitol chanting, "Whose state? Our state." U.S. Representative Stephen Cohen, a Democrat who has held the 9th congressional seat in Memphis since 2007, said that the redistricting effort puts us back in the Jim Crow era and counters everything that was done in the 60s to try and bring African American opportunities to elect representatives of their own choice. In Memphis's Midtown, which lies within Tennessee's 9th congressional, voters weren't surprised by the redistricting push, although they also expressed optimism. "I think we can win it," Sam Flanagan said. "I think Democrats have an opportunity to go talk to everyone who's going to be in whatever ridiculous district we're going to be in, and actually start talking to people who would normally be MAGA, but are maybe, feeling like, hey, Nashville doesn't understand who we are anymore." Flanagan added, "It's time that Democrats take the offensive on this. That would surprise the state if Democrats came out strong in this new district." Vanessa Rodley called the GOP effort predictable, referring to the Republican supermajority in Tennessee's legislature. She also highlighted that numerous GOP state legislators ran unopposed in previous elections. But at the same time, we as a people do have some power, she said. And if we got really upset about this and actually showed up, we could actually affect some change. Legina Mitchell-Scott, who is running for Shelby County Commission District 13, expects a court battle if the congressional district is redrawn. As she greeted a steady stream of voters heading to their polling place at Central Christian Church, she noted increased engagement among local voters. "To make it very clear, we are not going to stand down," she said. "We're going to fight."
Cases grow to 8 in hantavirus outbreak aboard cruise ship. 3 have died on the MV Hondius vessel. From Melina Khan, Eve Chen, and Nathan Diller, all USA Today staffers. An eighth hantavirus-linked case has been identified among passengers who traveled on a cruise ship in the Atlantic Ocean, officials announced on Wednesday, May the 6th. The World Health Organization said the particular strain has been confirmed as a Andes virus. 3 people have died since the outbreak began on the MV Hondius, a cruise ship run by the Netherlands-based operator Oceanwide Expeditions. 3 others were evacuated from the ship. Here's the latest. Where is the cruise ship now? The MV Hondius has been moored off the coast of Cape Verde, an island nation near Africa's west coast. It was expected to head to the Canary Islands off the coast of Spain after the evacuation. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus confirmed Wednesday morning. 3 suspected #hantavirus case patients have just been evacuated from the ship and are on their way to receive medical care in the Netherlands in cooperation with the WHO, the ship's operator, and national authorities from Cabo Verde, the United Kingdom, Spain, and the Netherlands. Ghebreyesus posted on X. Oceanwide said 2 of those people were in serious condition, and the third was currently asymptomatic but closely associated with an individual who passed away on board. Upon arriving in the Canary Islands, passengers and crew will be screened and treated in line with protocol from health officials, Oceanwide Expeditions and Spain's Ministry of Health said in a news release. The ship departed from Argentina on April the 1st and traveled across the Atlantic, making multiple stops in remote and ecologically diverse regions, including mainland Antarctica, South Georgia, Nightingale Island, Tristan da Cunha, St. Helena, and Ascension Island, according to WHO. What's happening on board? The situation is being closely monitored, and as a precaution, passengers have been asked to remain in their cabins, while disinfection and other public health measures are carried out. WHO official Maria van Kerkhove said during a May 5th news conference, medical teams from Cabo Verde are providing support on board the ship. The ship also has plenty of food and water on board, she added. Jake Rosamarin, a guest aboard MV Hondius, said in a statement that passengers are generally in good spirits and that safety protocols such as the social distancing and masking are in place. Passengers can have meals delivered to their cabin and are allowed access to outer decks for fresh air, he added. Oceanwide Expeditions and the crew have been doing everything within their ability to keep passengers safe, informed, and as comfortable as possible during this time, he said. The company confirmed to USA Today that the measures Rosemarin referenced were in place. Oceanwide noted in a May 6th update that 2 infectious disease physicians will fly in from the Netherlands to join the ship to expand medical care on board. Are there rats or mice on cruise ships? Generally, no, according to Walt Nadolny, Professor Emeritus of Marine Transportation and Global Business at the State University of New York Maritime College, and a former environmental officer for Carnival Cruise Line and Norwegian Cruise Line. In my time on cruise ships inspecting everything from the bilge to the galleys to passenger cabins, I've never seen a rodent or evidence of rodent droppings, he told USA Today. There are traps all over the place as a precaution, he said, but no rodents are typically caught. Cruise lines usually appoint a designated crew member on board to be in charge of those procedures. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's vessel sanitation program also routinely inspects ships that stop at U.S. ports across various areas, including pest and insect management. Inspectors interview the person in charge of the plant to manage pests on the ship, according to the health agency's website, and confirm that employees are knowledgeable about pest control. There are equivalent authorities in other jurisdictions as well. Van Kerkhove said during the briefing that the cruise operator told the WHO there are no rats on board MV Hondius. And how was hantavirus transmitted? Human hantavirus infection is primarily transmitted through contact with the urine, feces, or saliva of infected rodents. Although uncommon, limited human-to-human transmission has been reported in previous outbreaks per the WHO. Officials believe a husband and wife, Dutch nationals, were infected while they were off the cruise ship, engaging in wildlife expeditions. Others with suspected infections may have come in contact with the virus on islands as well, Van Kerkhove said during the briefing.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:30.
Continuing, we do believe that there may be some human-to-human transmission that's happening among the really close contacts, the husband and wife, people who've shared cabins, etc., Van Kerkhove said. On May the 6th, WHO said the strain of hantavirus has been confirmed through laboratory testing as Andes virus, a strain found in South America that is believed to spread person to person. WHO also said the current risk to the rest of the world is low, but it is continuing to monitor the situation and provide updates. Symptoms typically begin 2 to 3 weeks after infection and can include fever, chills, muscle aches, vomiting, and diarrhea. In serious cases, it can cause issues with lung and heart function, per the Mayo Clinic.
Trump ramps up pressure for Iran peace. The president says without talks, bombing would resume. Michael Loria, Bart Jansen, and Andrea Riquer of USA Today write, President Donald Trump said Iran could either agree to a framework for the peace talks or bombing would resume after he had paused the military operation to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said on social media, the war that began February 28th with a ceasefire since April 7 could end if Iran agrees to U.S. terms and allows commercial shipping through the strait. But he said if Tehran doesn't agree, bombing would resume at a much higher level and intensity. Now, his appeal for peace came after he paused Project Freedom. That was an effort launched on May the 4th to move U.S. commercial vessels through the critical shipping channel. Military leaders said a few U.S. vessels safely passed through the strait in the operation, but Iran restarted its attacks on commercial vessels and neighboring Gulf states. Trump said in a statement, we have mutually agreed that Project Freedom will be paused for a short period of time to see whether or not the agreement can be finalized. An Iranian foreign minister spokesperson, cited by Iran's ISNA news agency, said Iran would convey its response soon via Pakistan, which hosted the war's only peace talks and has since served as the main conduit for messages between the sides. By the afternoon of May 5, there had been no public comments from Washington's wartime ally, Israel, which has pressed Washington to stand tough on demands before any agreement. An Israeli source told Reuters Israel was not aware that Trump was potentially close to a deal to end the war, and that Israel was instead preparing for an escalation in fighting. A Pakistani source and another source briefed on the mediation confirmed information initially reported by Axios about a proposed 14-point, one-page memorandum that would formally end the war, according to Reuters. The source briefed on the mediation said, U.S. negotiations were being led by Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. If both sides agreed on the preliminary deal, that would start the clock on a 30-day of detailed negotiations to reach a full agreement. Now, the full agreement, that would include the U.S. lifting sanctions, releasing frozen Iranian funds, Iran and the U.S. lifting competing blockades on the Strait of Hormuz, and some curbs on Iran's nuclear program, with the aim of a pause or moratorium on enrichment of uranium. While the sources said the memorandum would not initially require concessions from either side, They did not mention several key demands Washington has made in the past, which Iran has rejected, such as curbs on Iran's missile program and an end to its support for proxy militias in the Middle East. The sources spoke of potential curbs on future Iranian enrichment of uranium, but made no mention of Iran's existing stockpile of more than 900 pounds of it, already enriched to near weapons grade, which Washington previously demanded it give up before there's any end to the war. Even if the reported 14-point memorandum appeared to sidestep some demands rejected by Iran in the past, there were indications Tehran could still hold out for more U.S. concessions. In a post on X, Iranian lawmaker Ibrahim Razaei, a spokesperson for Parliament's powerful Foreign Policy and National Security Committee, described the text reported by Axios as more of an American wish list than a reality. The Americans will not gain anything in a war they are losing that they have not gained in face-to-face negotiations, he wrote. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, visiting China, made no mention of Trump's latest remarks, but said Tehran was holding out for a fair and comprehensive agreement. Reports of the possible agreement caused the price of oil to tumble on May 6th, with Brent crude trading just below $103 a barrel in the morning, down 6.5%. Gas prices, which lagged behind the moves in oil, were higher, however, hitting $4.54, according to GasBuddy. In his post, Trump said, assuming Iran agrees to give what has been agreed to, which is perhaps a big assumption, the already legendary Epic Fury will be at an end, and the highly effective blockade will allow the Hormuz Strait to open to all, including Iran. If they don't agree, the bombing starts, and it will be sadly at a much higher level and intensity than it was before, Trump added. Now, earlier, Trump cited great progress in negotiations to announce the pause on Project Freedom. The mission failed to bring about any significant resumption of traffic through the waterway and only provoked a new wave of Iranian strikes on ships in the strait and targets in neighboring countries, particularly the United Arab Emirates. In the latest incident, a French container ship was attacked while traveling through the strait on May the 5th, injuring 8 crew members and damaging the vessel, shipping company CGM said. At least 32 such attacks on civilian ships have happened since the war began February 28, and that's according to the United Nations International Maritime Organization. Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth told reporters May 5th that 2 U.S. commercial vessels and 2 Navy destroyers passed through the strait, demonstrating that Iran had not blocked it completely. But Trump paused the assistance to commercial vessels while aiming for a broader peace deal.
Founder of CNN changed mass media. Larger-than-life figure remembered as visionary. From Ryan Alexander of USA Today. Ted Turner, the maverick businessman and philanthropist who turned a financially struggling Atlanta TV station into a media empire around CNN, the first 24-hour news cable station, has died. He was 87. Turner Enterprises announced his death in a news release obtained by USA Today on May the 6th, sharing that Turner died surrounded by his family. The garrulous broadcast entrepreneur known as the Mouth of the South sold his father's successful billboard business to purchase Atlanta independent station WJRJ, Channel 17, in 1970. Turner expanded that purchase into Turner Broadcasting System, or TBS, which included Turner Network Television, or TNT, and the groundbreaking 24-hour news channel, a cable news network, or CNN, which launched its nonstop news coverage in 1980. Ted was an intensely involved and committed leader, intrepid, fearless, and always willing to back a hunch and trust his own judgment. Mark Thompson, chairman and CEO of CNN Worldwide, said in a statement. He was and always will be the presiding spirit of CNN. Ted is the giant on whose shoulders we stand, and we will all take a moment today to recognize him and his impact on our lives and the world. Turner was the longtime colorful owner of both the Atlanta Braves professional baseball team and Atlanta Hawks professional basketball team, teams that provided key content for his TV superstation WTCG, and which earned both teams a nationwide following. The one-time cellar-dweller Braves became known as America's team and eventually dominated the National League in the 1990s under Turner's ownership, including a 1995 World Series victory. Turner was the epitome of this swaggering business titan and sportsman, known for hunting, drinking rum, and arguing politics with his friend, the late Cuban President Fidel Castro. Turner's obsessive dive into yachting and the America's Cup yacht race earned him the media dubbed title of Captain Outrageous. Yet the amateur skipper led his yacht to improbable victory in the 1977 America's Cup and was inducted into the National Sailing Hall of Fame in 2011. Outspoken in politics, Turner founded and sponsored the Goodwill Games, which lasted from 1986 to 2001. International games started in the hopes of easing Cold War tensions through friendly athletic competition. Turner is survived by his 5 children, 14 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. A private family service is planned, and a public memorial will be held at a later date, with details to follow, Turner Enterprises said in its statement. A star in his own right, Turner wed activist actor Jane Fonda in 1991, his 3rd marriage. The unlikely union lasted 10 years, and the mutual admiration between the two never diminished. I will never love anyone like I love him, Fonda said of her former husband, Turner, years after they divorced in 2001. Born Robert Edward Turner III on November 19th of 1938 in Cincinnati, Turner was inspired by his billboard magnate father, Robert Edward Turner II. He told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "Son, be sure to set goals so high you couldn't possibly achieve them in one lifetime. That way, you'll always have something ahead of you," Turner wrote in his 2008 memoir, Call Me Ted, My Life, My Way. He lived up to that ethos, despite a rebellious youth and an early departure from Brown University. Turner lore suggested the college student was expelled from the Ivy League school for having a female student in his dormitory room. Turner insisted the visit did not get him expelled. "It is true I got caught and suspended, but I was already preparing to leave," Turner wrote in his memoir. He returned home and took over the Atlanta-based family business, Turner Advertising Company, at age 24, following his father's death by suicide in March of 1963. He ambitiously expanded to radio station ownership and then TV stations, the rise of CNN, which exploded to ubiquity with its wall-to-wall coverage of the 1991 Gulf War, made Turner a media megastar, earning him Time magazine's 1991 Man of the Year. CNN, once derided as the chicken noodle network for its low wages and amateurish presentation, is now the video medium of record, the Time magazine cover story stated. The TBS network included the creation of the 24-hour Cartoon Network in 1992 and Turner Classic Movies in 1994. TCM consisted mainly of classic theatrically released feature films from the Turner Entertainment Film Library. Turner also oversaw the purchase of 2 motion picture production companies, New Line Cinema and Castle Rock Entertainment, in 1993. In 1996, the media giant Time Warner Inc. merged with the Turner Broadcasting System, making Turner vice chairman, a position he kept when Time Warner merged with the internet giant AOL in 2001. The dot-com crash was disastrous for the company and Turner, the largest individual shareholder in the combined company. "I lost 80% of my worth and subsequently lost my job," Turner told the New York Times in 2010. Let me repeat that. "We looked it up to see if I was the biggest loser of all time because I lost about $8 billion. But I don't think I was the biggest loser." Turner focused on his already impressive philanthropic efforts. In 1997, the businessman shocked diplomats at a black tie gala by announcing the donation of a staggering $1 billion to the United Nations to benefit programs aiding refugees and children. He was an outspoken environmentalist, funding conservation programs through his Turner Foundation. As for his legacy, the outspoken Turner wrote in his memoir that he often considered what he would write on his own tombstone. In the middle of my career, I considered, here lies Ted Turner. He never owned a broadcast network, Turner wrote in his memoir. These days I'm leaning toward, I have nothing left to say. In his lifetime, Turner said plenty. If I had to live my life over, there are things I would do differently, Turner wrote. But it's been a remarkable ride. I have very few regrets.
Sneaking into the money section, April's layoffs show a job market that is stagnant. Tian Zhang, John Heasley, and Yusser Pune of USA Today Network write, Nike, Apple, Republic National Distributing Company, a major alcohol distributor in the U.S., are among the latest companies listed on USA Today's layoff tracker, which is powered by Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification. The acronym is WARN filings. The tracker captured Nike's latest layoff filing in St. Charles, Missouri on April 23, showing 172 job cuts, part of its broader plan to lay off 1,400 workers. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:46. Continuing, April 23rd, same day, Apple's notice appeared in the tracker detailing that a store closure in Maryland will affect 78 workers. Republic National Distributing filed layoff notices from multiple locations, including Texas, South Carolina, and Virginia. That totaled more than 3,000 job cuts. 4 months into this year, corporate America has made nearly 1,600 layoff announcements, affecting more than 128,000 workers, according to USA Today's tracker. Now that's 5% fewer notices this year compared with the same period last year. A large wave of mass layoff announcements from companies, including Amazon, UPS, made January a hard month for workers all across the country. Now, since then, WARN filings show a cooling trend as affected workers declined month by month, indicating a labor market stuck in a holding pattern amid economic uncertainty driven by the Iran war and mounting concerns over artificial intelligence displacing workers. We must have this stagnant labor market from a macro perspective, where companies are not hiring many people, but they're also not choosing to lay off a lot of folks. This from Laura Ulrich, Director of Economic Research in North America. In an April 21 report on AI and geopolitics, J.P. Morgan chief U.S. economist Michael Feroli described a market showing resilience in the face of headwinds, but one where month-over-month swings are growing more erratic than in prior economic expansions. The current labor market is neither overheating nor collapsing, but is increasingly sensitive to shocks, according to Feroli. WARN notices work as an indicator to estimate the job losses from major companies and the pace of those a few months ahead of actual departures. Since cuts announced today are not going to land until about 2 months after the announcement. Now, while these notices indicate the number of job losses, they really don't provide any information on the other side of the ledger, which is how many people were hired. The net job gains or losses in April will be provided by the Bureau of Labor Statistics in its job report May 8th. The agency's reports through March showed choppiness month over month, with a loss of 133,000 jobs in February between gains in January and March. Nowadays, the layoff cycles are much shorter than before, according to Brian Creeley. Now, he founded a Life After Layoff, a career coaching company. Creeley said before, a worker might expect a possible displacement once every decade, but now it's really every 18 months to 2 years. Creeley said he is actively coaching about 25 people and has about 200 clients in a typical year. While 1/3 of his clients seek help after being laid off, about another 1/3 are still employed but sense the layoff is coming. They're starting to notice these indicators, those warning signs like, suddenly my boss's tone has changed in my meetings, and they're saying some weird things in our town halls, Creeley said. For many workers, finding a fresh start has been hard. People who lost jobs recently have previously told USA Today how competitive the job market is and expressed concern about whether their role would still exist in the near future. Nearly a quarter of U.S. households live paycheck to paycheck, according to the Bank of America. A layoff might quickly turn into a financial crisis for some families. The best advice from Creeley for today's workers is to be prepared and keep an updated resume. In this market, we have to be more proactive and not wait for the other shoe to drop. The WARN Act, passed in 1988, requires that employers with 100 or more full-time workers provide at least 60 days written notice ahead of a plant closure or a mass layoff. The mandatory advance notice helps the workers with career transitions where they can start a job search while still technically employed. USA Today tracks WARN notices daily from 43 state labor departments and the District of Columbia. The tracker reflects information listed in the filings themselves, shows the latest mass layoff notices companies in the U.S. reported to state governments. The earliest were filed in the 90s. Readers research the layoff notices by state, company, and notice year to see where, when, and why the layoffs are happening. California leads the nation in WARN layoffs, followed by Washington and Texas, which likely reflects their larger work populations or even the volatile nature of key industries. Now, although state requirements vary and the Act does not cover small or medium-sized companies, experts see these filings as a near real-time economic indicator for the job market, while some other government statistics can lag by weeks or even months. Plus, other federal job-related data rarely provides the level of granularity that WARN does, as filings include details such as employer name, number of impacted workers, where, layoff announcement date, layoff effective date, and much more. The data, however, comes with caveats. Seasonal patterns in any single large layoff announcement can distort month-to-month readings. January's spike in job cuts, for example, reflected concentrated layoffs at a handful of major companies. Layoffs in general have seasonality, according to Sarah Malik, assistant professor at the University of Utah's David Eccles School of Business.
Unwinding a trust presents problems. Tax changes make some parents regret fast gifting. From Medora Lee of USA Today. Giving is expected during the Great Wealth Transfer, but some families are discovering after they rushed to give away their assets to save on taxes that they may have gotten the timing wrong, some financial analysts said. Many families in 2024 and 25 rushed to their accountants, advisors, and attorneys to set up estate plans to lock in the benefits of the soon-to-be expiring Tax Cuts and Job Acts of 2017. The TCJA lowered tax rates, doubled the standard deduction, and doubled the lifetime gift exemption, but was scheduled to sunset at the end of 2025. All that changed when President Trump signed into law on July 4, 2025, his signature tax and spending package that made permanent all those provisions. People could slow down and take time to hash out a plan to give their assets away. Well, except for those who have already accelerated their gift giving. Are people having buyer's remorse? Yes, maybe some of them, said Dina Friedman, a private wealth strategies advisor at Merrill. What happened? With more than 11,000 baby boomers now turning 65 years old every day, approximately 124 million, let me repeat that, 124 trillion is expected to shift to younger generations and charities through 2048, according to Sorelli and Associates. With so much at stake, wealthy families cheered the TCJA, which doubled the tax-free lifetime gift exemption to $11.18 million per person. 22.36 million for married couples in 2018 from 5.49 million in 2017. By 2025, the inflation-adjusted exemptions had reached 13.99 million per person, or 27.98 million per couple. Those amounts, in addition to an annual $19,000 gifts to as many people as you wanted, could be given tax-free. But TCJA was set to expire at the end of 2025, and lifetime exemptions would revert to lower levels. The exemption was set to drop in half to about $7 million for an individual and $14 million per couple on January 1st of this year. Rich families not wanting to pay estate taxes on millions more dollars rushed to give away as much as they could to take advantage of this limited time higher gift exemptions. Then Congress passed the tax provisions of Trump's signature legislation, popularly known as the One Big Beautiful Bill, last July before the TCJA sunset. It made the huge inflation-adjusted exemptions permanent. Most wealthy Americans breathed a sigh of relief, but some regretted accelerating their giving when they could have held on to and enjoyed their riches a little longer, some advisors said. Now, what can people with regrets do? Clawing back some of the assets you've given away can be tricky, but most of the time there are a few options, advisors said. Irrevocable trusts, long known to be unchangeable and irreversible, have evolved over the years to be more flexible, Friedman said. Decanting is a legal process that allows trustees to pour assets from an old trust into a new one with more favorable terms, such as giving trustees authority to distribute principal. A lot depends on state law, but you can also move to a better, more favorable state, she said. The trustee has the power to move a trust to another jurisdiction. Many irrevocable trusts nowadays also have independent third-party trust protectors who can modify trust terms, such as altering administrative provisions, removing or replacing trustees, changing governing law, or modifying beneficiary interests, Friedman said. In an irrevocable children's trust, the grantor or the original donor can take a loan out from the trust without tax consequences as long as it's paid back with interest.
You're listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for Thursday, May the 7th, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy
and Ken Drost.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Ken Drost.
and Jim Duffy. And turning to our sports page, AFCA, CFP at 24, but year not longer. From John Bryce of USA Today, college football's largest professional organization for coaches publicly endorsed an expansion to the college football playoff, elimination of conference championship games, and an earlier end to the season. Expanding the playoff is inevitable, New Mexico coach Jason Eck told USA Today Sports. Getting the season completed earlier is crucial for the future of college football. While addressing the football calendar at its recent AFCA Board of Trustees meeting, the association declared its formal support for an expansion to the current 12-team CFP. The AFCA also outlined a method to conclude the playoff by the second weekend of January. Future playoff models should maximize the number of participants while honoring the proposed completion date, the AFCA said in a statement posted to its website. In a late April interview with USA Today, Sports, first-year Kentucky coach Will Stein adamantly supported a move to a 24-team playoff format. For us, 9-game SEC league, hell yeah, he said. If I'm a Kentucky Wildcat fan and we get to 24, that's what we want. That means 8 people from this league are getting in. If you get a chance in a knockout round, I'm taking it all day. Get a home field game here in Kroger Field? Are you kidding me? Love it. First-year Memphis coach Charles Huff reached May the 5th also voiced unequivocal support for a CFP expansion. Tell me how many teams you want in the spot ball, said Huff, 2 years removed from a Sun Belt Conference title at Marshall and having guided his teams to 5 bowls in 5 seasons as a football bowl subdivision head coach. There's pros and cons to both. Not sure there is a perfect number, but support was not universal. Second-year Central Michigan coach Matt Drinkall, who previously coached 4 NAIA playoff games and served for 6 seasons as an assistant coach in Jeff Monken's Army program, pushed back against the support of an expansion format that would ultimately eliminate all conference championship games. The reality is there are paramount issues the NCAA needs to prioritize before they can meaningfully address postseason play in football, said Drinkall, who guided CMU to a 7-win season and bowl berth as a first-time FBS head coach in 2025. Until those issues are addressed, the football paradigm will continue to constantly change. With so much uncertainty, you just try to coach your best, play your best, and fight like hell to win them all. How would the AFCA's endorsed model potentially work? The Coaches Association wants to reduce bye weeks from 2 to 1, preserve a dedicated window for the annual Army-Navy game, have no more than 6 days between CFP contests. Structuring the season in this way will better support student athletes by closely matching the academic calendar and aligning with the single transfer portal window.
Title repeat. Up the Aces sleeves. The 2026 season features clear contenders, bold climbers, and fresh starts. Megan L. Hall of USA Today writes, when the WNBA season tips off on May 8, teams start separating themselves into competitive tiers. In 2025, the Las Vegas Aces finished one of the greatest title runs in league history with a 500 record. At the All-Star break, Las Vegas rattled off 16 straight wins to get to the postseason. The Aces then survived 2 down-to-the-wire playoff matchups with the Seattle Storm and Indiana Fever to reach the finals, where they swept the Phoenix Mercury. Now, that sort of grit and determination places the Aces on a different level than many franchises, and for this year's season, automatically places them in the championship contender tier again. Who else has a chance to win a title this season? Which teams have more work to do? From contenders to rebuilding, here's where each franchise lands in USA Today's tiers ahead of the season tip-off. Number 1, championship contenders, the Atlanta Dream. Now, while Atlanta lost center Brittany Griner to free agency, it returned 4 of 5 starters. A major victory for a team pushing to surpass a franchise best 30 wins achieved last season. The Dream also returned the leader of their bench unit, 6th Player of the Year Naz Hillman, and added 2-time All-Star Angel Reese through a trade. If Atlanta can find a combination of players who can contribute to its bench, it could make the finals for the first time since 2013. Next, the Indiana Fever. Now, their title hopes start and end with the health of Caitlin Clark, who played just 13 games last season because of a series of soft tissue injuries. Indiana still made it within 1 game of the WNBA Finals, but ran out of steam as injuries took their toll with the season on the line. Clark is healthy now, and with the help from Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston, Indiana is poised to make a deep run again, potentially win the franchise's 2nd title. Now, the Las Vegas Aces, after winning 3 championships in 4 years, the Aces want to rewrite history this season. Hunger is still prevalent with this group, just because we're chasing something that hasn't been done before. I don't think anybody's ever went back-to-back twice on 2 different occasions from Aces point guard Chelsea Gray. Vegas likely had the best chance of any team to win another title after bringing back 8 players from its 2025 championship roster and adding pieces like guard Chennedy Carter. The next, the New York Liberty. Now, they didn't look like themselves last season, largely because of injuries. New York was bounced from the first round of the playoffs. That's a shocking development for the 2024 champions. The Liberty's core, Sabrina Ionescu, Jonquel Jones, and Brianna Stewart, are back, and they've added 3-time WNBA All-Star Satou Sabally to the lineup. She instantly elevates New York's profile on both ends, making New York an early candidate to win another title. Tier number 2, the playoff locks. Golden State Valkyries. In 2025, they became the first expansion franchise in WNBA history to make the playoffs. And with newcomer Gabby Williams in the fold, Golden State could make the postseason again. She's a lightning rod on both sides of the floor and could be a nightmare to defend, besides stars Veronica Burton and Kayla Thornton. Furthermore, should Golden State deploy a similar version of its top 5 ranked defense from last season, it will be in a position to surpass its 23 wins and potentially secure a top playoff seed. Next, the Los Angeles Sparks. Now, they have so much experience in veteran leadership, it's hard not to pencil them in for a playoff run. Kelsey Plum, Derica Hamby, Ariel Atkins, and Nneka Ogwumike have collectively won 5 titles, and that goes a long way for a team looking to win more. The Sparks feel like a team that could play spoiler when the postseason arrives. The key for LA will be getting the most out of its bench, led by the former number 2 overall pick Cameron Brink and veteran guard Erica Wheeler. Next, the Minnesota Lynx. Now, they won't see Napheesa Collier before June, leaving it up in the air how successful the team might be in the first half of the season. Minnesota also lost starters Bridget Carlton and Alana Smith, plus bench pieces Natisha Heidman and Jessica Shepard in free agency. The Lynx will have Kayla McBride and Courtney Williams and newcomer Natasha Howard to help keep them afloat. But the team's ceiling beyond making the playoffs, unknown. Next, the Phoenix Mercury. The Phoenix Mercury made it to the WNBA Finals last season behind the strength of their core, Kalia Cooper, Satou Sabally, and Alyssa Thomas, and a productive bench. After 1 season, Sabally moved on to New York, leaving Phoenix to replace her production by committee. Phoenix will likely make the playoffs, but without Savali, another WNBA Finals run, that's a tall task. And Tier 3 playoff hopefuls, Chicago Sky. For the third consecutive season, the Sky's roster does not look similar to the one in the year prior, making it hard to establish consistency. Still, Chicago had plenty of experienced players who can help it to be competitive, including newcomer Skylar Diggins, Rickea Jackson, and Jonai Carrington, plus Courtney Vandersloot and Azura Stevens, who were on the 2021 championship team. Dallas Wings. With a first-year WNBA head coach and multiple new faces in Dallas, the Wings hope to return to the playoffs for the first time since 2023. Now, their ceiling is extremely high on paper, backed by its guard trio, which includes number 1 draft pick Ozzie Fudd and an upgraded front court featuring co-defensive player of the year Alana Smith. And then finally, Tier 4, which is building or rebuilding, Connecticut Sun. It's hard to gauge just how good the Sun is going to be with a move to Houston next season on the horizon and only 4 players on the roster with more than 5 years of experience. With veteran center Brittany Griner serving as a mentor, the Sun is going to learn and have fun, even if reaching the playoffs is out of reach. Next, the Portland Fire. Now they're chasing the Valkyries expansion team standards set last year, 20 wins and a playoff spot. That's a gigantic goal for a new franchise. But players like Bridget Carlton, 26 playoff games, and WNBA Megan Gustafson, 16 playoff games, can help Portland's young roster understand that it is possible. Next, Seattle Storm. Now, they lost 4 out of their 5 starters from last season and multiple bench players. However, they can lean on all-star Ezzie McBeggar and WNBA champion Stephanie Dolson to help guide its young roster. With first-round picks Awa Pham, Fauja Johnson, and Taina Mayer also in the mix, they can work toward forming their new identity. Next, Toronto Tempo. Now their offense promises to be exciting, with head coach Sandy Brondello, who spent the last 4 seasons with the Liberty. Brondello helped the Liberty become a top 5 offensive in 3 of her 4 seasons, and could bring that same successful formula to Toronto. The Tempo will need it as they assimilate into the league. And finally, the Washington Mystics. With an average roster age of 23, there's a full youth movement in Washington. Still, the Mystics have 2 All-Stars, Kiki Iriafen and Sonia Citron, leading the way. Center Shakira Austin is also an underrated piece who could help the team's continued rise.
Out of Grief Rises Mental Well-Being Campaign. From Jarrett Bell, a columnist of USA Today. This is grief with a purpose. More than 4 years since the tragedy of losing his only son, Dwayne Haskins Sr., is so determined to add depth to the legacy of the former NFL quarterback's complicated life, with compassion that he is certain will help others. Here are some words for this: admirable, courageous, and spiritual. Haskins, through the Families Foundation, will host a talk-back discussion on mental health on May 16th at the Gaithersburg Arts Barn in Maryland that, following a community walk in conjunction with the National Alliance of Mental Illness, which is NAMI, will honor his son's life and launch an awareness campaign. He is convinced that his son, a Heisman Trophy finalist in 2018, who led the NCAA with 4,831 passing yards and 50 touchdowns in his lone season as a starter at Ohio State, yet was cut less than 2 seasons after Washington drafted him in the first round in 2019, suffered from unchecked mental health issues as his career and life quickly spiraled off course. Bro, it's personal to me, Haskins told USA Today Sports, a day after commemorating Dwayne Jr.'s 29th birthday on May the 3rd. I've never said anything about Dwayne publicly. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 1:15. Continuing, the floor is yours, sir. We knew our son had some mental health challenges, said Haskins, whose family includes his wife, Tamara, and daughter, Tamia. As a family, we recognize that it's very hard for us to communicate that when a professional athlete is pursuing his dream, that he has mental health issues. There's a stigma with that. We started to recognize warning signs that we knew something wasn't right with Dwayne. Now we've become an advocate to get people aware of that. There's mental health that manifests over a period of time. Then all of a sudden something will trauma a person where they won't be able to have effective decision making, and it continually gets triggered and triggered. It's a striking coincidence that Haskins is launching this campaign. He hopes to develop a comprehensive program and take it nationwide next year, at a time when the NFL is ramping up mental health support programs in the aftermath of tragedies in recent months where two active players, Marshawn Keeland of the Dallas Cowboys and Rondale Moore of the Minnesota Vikings, died by suicide. I do think there is still a stigma, but I think the stigma is more around help-seeking behaviors as opposed to mental health in general. Dr. Nakaya Neely-Lampe, NFL Vice President of Wellness and Clinical Services, told USA Today Sports, "The stigma is it a sign of weakness to ask for help?" At the last NFL owners meeting in late March, the league announced the expansion of its mental health services to mandate that all 32 teams must employ a full-time mental health clinician who operates at each team's headquarters. Previously, the league required teams to have a part-time clinician. Additionally, the NFL is now partnering with Cigna to form a network of specialists for players and their families to tap into beyond the team specialists. You would be surprised at how receptive players are at using these resources, said Noah Lamptey, who worked in a similar capacity for the NFL Players Association, which is the NFLPA, before joining the NFL. I've had players who say, listen, we've got an athletic trainer, right? I've got a strength and conditioning coach. Why would I not have somebody who's going to work with me in terms of what's going on in my head? Noah Lamptey hopes that by expanding the NFL program, challenges in getting support and resources immediately will be addressed. Undoubtedly, when crisis strikes, timing is critical. They don't have the time. I need to work with somebody now, Lamptey said. We need to find a way to get them in. Strike while the iron's hot. Haskins was unaware that the NFL recently announced its added emphasis on mental health support programs, yet applauds the effort. As he reflects on his son's journey, he suspects a barrier existed with an inability to acknowledge his challenges from a mental health perspective. I think that's what the problem was. He wasn't strong enough to say, hey, I need help, Haskins said. But we knew something was wrong. That's why the celebration on May the 16th is a platform for people to know about the warning signs. Put yourself in the father's shoes. There is no playbook for losing a son or daughter. The grieving Haskins realizes will continue for the rest of his life. He pointed out that he and Tamara are still grieving the losses of their young mothers in 1988, yet have been forced to cope with losing their son in a different context. There was never a chance to say goodbye before Dwayne Jr. was struck by a dump truck while crossing a highway in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in the early morning of April 9th of 2022. In the circumstances surrounding the death, according to the toxicology report, Dwayne Jr. was legally drunk with ketamine and other drugs in his system, fueling allegations of foul play. Left many unanswered questions. Dwayne Jr., who played his third and final NFL season as a backup with the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2021, was in Florida for several weeks of off-season training. While Haskins didn't address the controversies, including a dismissed lawsuit pertaining to image rights against Dwayne Jr.'s widow, Kalabira, it seems clear that in processing the tragedy, the focus on mental health is an anchor in addition to his Christian faith. At the upcoming event, they will use an acronym, NINO, N-I-N-O, to hammer home a theme of heeding warning signs. He's hoping it will ultimately be widely recognized as a distress signal. NINO, no, I'm not okay, is going to be a code word for people who don't understand or don't know how to articulate their emotions, according to Haskins. We believe that if we can get this acronym in place, we will be able to save more lives or get people the attention or assistance from mental health organizations like NAMI, N-A-M-I, to provide solutions. Talk about addressing a stigma. Here is a suggestion, NFL. Enlist Haskins to visit teams to address their players by sharing his journey. Just imagine the real talk in those sessions, especially now, as so many NFL coaches and executives maintain that after the tragedies in recent months, they are more sensitive to mental health challenges. The awareness has resonated to the point that some say it was an increasing factor in evaluating prospects heading into the recent draft. This generation has a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, maybe handle it a lot different than our generation. Les Snead, the Los Angeles Rams general manager, told USA Today Sports, alluding to societal patterns. But I do know this, too. If you think about what they're going through, this group's been getting driven. You're a professional athlete. You're a company. You make a bad play, and the next thing you know, you're I know there are other variables, but being a general manager and a father, you definitely understand what this generation reality is. Haskins knows what happens on the field and on social media only scratches the surface. One of his key messages for the upcoming event addresses what he calls the perseverance of the dream, which encompasses myriad potential pitfalls. If he sounds like a man with a spiritual calling, he will not disagree. Haskins says matter-of-factly that his campaign is inspired by this message from God. For you guys to cope, you need to share this. He can also imagine a message from his son. Dwayne is looking down at us right now, Haskins said, and it's, I am proud of you, Mom and Dad. You're bringing awareness on my behalf, which is quite the noble purpose.
Rory McIlroy motivated for more majors after second Masters win. Adam Schupak of Golf Week writes, as a past champion of the Masters, CBS Sports' Trevor Immelman had some rare access to Rory McIlroy's successful title defense of the green jacket last month. That's from a seat at his Champions Dinner to the green jacket presentation at Butler Cabin. And he observed a newfound comfort for the Northern Irishman at Augusta National Golf Club. It was the whole way that he managed the week. And it just felt like he came there with so much less uncertainty and anxiety than I've ever seen from him before, according to Immelman. Now, Immelman was the 2008 Masters champ. He just seemed, throughout the week, whether it be at the dinner or in the locker room or, around the club, he just seemed to be so much more light than what I've ever experienced from him before at the Masters, having just won the year before. And you could just really feel his comfort level throughout the whole week, like he was totally comfortable and prepared for whatever was going to happen. Even watching the green jacket presentation down in Butler, as Jim Nantz was interviewing him, and he was there with the chairman, the atmosphere in the room felt different to me than the year before. I mean, the year before it was such relief that he had finally got it done, whereas this time around, he just seemed so comfortable with everything that was happening, and that was the thing that I really took out of it. Now, McIlroy became just the fourth player to successfully defend his title at the Masters, and the first since Tiger Woods in 2002, earning his sixth major championship. Even McIlroy agreed that winning at Augusta a year after completing the career Grand Slam felt different this time. I felt like winning the Grand Slam was going to be this life-changing thing. But in some ways, it was. But in other ways, I had to remember, no, I still have a lot of my career left, and I want to keep playing and competing. Now, McIlroy said this on May the 6th during a news conference ahead of the Truist Championship. This year, I think, winning was validation for all the work that I put in over the last few years to get myself back to this place where I'm winning majors. It's funny how fast McIlroy went from seemingly being resigned to being a nearly man at the Masters to a two-time champ. And he summed up how being part of that exclusive club that gets to wear a green jacket around the property has almost become old hat, with a cute story about a 5-year-old daughter, Poppy. I think for Poppy, it sort of seems normal for her now to just go into Butler Cabin at the end of the day and have a grilled cheese and talk with the chairman, he said. McIlroy returns to work this week in Charlotte after taking 3 weeks off and skipping 2 PGA Tour signature events. He took a trip to New York with his wife, guest of President Trump, who recognized his Masters achievement mid-speech at a state dinner for King Charles III at the White House 8 days ago. Gave himself a good 10 days to let this latest victory soak in before it was back to the grindstone to prep for his next stretch. And that includes the PGA Championship next week. I'm not concerned about him taking his time off at all, Immelman said. He, quite frankly, did it before the Masters. Had a great week there. It doesn't hurt that McIlroy returns at one of his favorite hunting grounds, site of his first PGA Tour victory in 2010, and the course Jordan Spieth dubbed Rory McIlroy Country Club. McIlroy, who celebrated his 37th birthday, May 4th, has won 4 times in all at Quail Hollow and is seeking to become the first since Woods at Augusta National to win at the same course 5 or more times. As a small measure of his success at Quail, McIlroy has carded 20 birdies on the Green Mile, the nickname given to the challenging closing stretch consisting of numbers 16 through 18. The most of any player since 2010, and 5 more than his closest competitor. Now that includes an 80-foot bomb, the longest putt made by a competitor on the 17th hole, which he dropped during the 3rd round in 2016. But a year ago, McIlroy showed up at Quail Hollow and laid an egg at the PGA Championship, a non-factor who barely made the cut and finished tied for 47th. He suffered through an extended post-Masters hangover as he struggled to set new goals after reaching the top of his personal mountain. But just as that winning feeling at the Masters was different this time, so too is McIlroy's drive to push beyond 6 majors. He's even entertained the idea of doing the career Grand Slam twice. He's already halfway there. I feel like, if anything, I'm more motivated after what happened at Augusta this year than I've ever been, he said.
Legal issue resolved. Who might sign Stefan Diggs? From Nate Davis of USA Today. More than a week clear of the 2026 NFL Draft, Stefan Diggs remains one of the league's most high-profile free agents. However, with his legal issues seeming resolved, a jury in Dedham, Massachusetts on May the 5th found Diggs not guilty of strangulation and assault and battery charges stemming from allegations brought by his former live-in chef. A pathway for his ongoing employment in the league could soon materialize. I just think teams have been reluctant to sign him with these false charges hanging over his head, Mitchell Schuster, an attorney for Diggs, said. Now that he's been exonerated and his truth has been heard and his position that this never occurred and he's been falsely accused, he's been vindicated. I believe that a team will reach out and sign him, and they'll be lucky to get him. That said, even with his off-field issues clearing up, Diggs, a 4-time Pro Bowler, he's 58 catches shy of 1,000 for his career, will likely face a very different market for his services. Not only will he be 33 in November, but Diggs' next team also will be his 4th in the last 4 seasons. An intelligent, engaging, and productive player. He had 85 receptions for 1,013 yards and 4 touchdowns last year for the AFC New England Patriots. Despite missing more than half of the 2024 campaign with a torn ACL, Diggs also has been known to wear out his welcome. He signed a 3-year, $63.5 million deal with the Pats a year ago, but was released in March by a team that immediately went out and signed Romeo Doubs, a far less accomplished receiver than Diggs, and is widely expected to trade for the Philadelphia Eagles wideout A.J. Brown sometime after June the 1st, once Philly can more easily absorb the salary cap ramifications from such a transaction. Furthermore, most teams have already exhausted their free agent budgets, so Diggs may essentially be looking at a short-term incentive-laden arrangement that could land him right back on the market in 2027. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:30. Continuing, given such considerations, which teams might be the most logical destinations for his services this upcoming season? These six would seem to make a lot of sense. The Washington Commanders, the Indianapolis Colts, the Los Angeles Rams, Houston Texans, Denver Broncos, and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay. And the Thunder overpower the Lakers. The Pistons pop the Cavs. Lorenzo Reyes of USA Today writes about the NBA Conference semifinals. The back half of the NBA playoff conference semifinals tipped off with another pair of series openers. In the first game on May 5, the number 1 Pistons built an early lead against the number 4 Cavs, extending it to as many as 18 points. But Detroit needed to fend off a Cleveland rally in the fourth to defend home court, 111-101. In the nightcap, the number 1 Thunder continued their quest to repeat with a defensive masterclass at home against the number 4 Lakers, 108-90. So, the winners and the losers from the games May 5th. The winners, Jared McCain, Carson Wallace, and the Thunder bench deliver. Oklahoma City's bench is one of its several strengths, and the group was already in Game 1. The Thunder bench outscored LA by a 34-15 margin, which put intense pressure on the Lakers when their starters sat. Detroit gets to the line. So how does a team shoot a worse percentage than its opponent, have only one more field goal, and win by 10? Get to the free throw line. The plan for the Pistons early in the game was clear. Attack the paint and put Cavs defenders in compromising positions. The Pistons went on to line 35 times to the line and converted 27 of those for a solid 77.1% from the stripe. Next, the Pistons turned turnovers into points. The other reason Detroit launched massive runs was because it turned defense into offense. Detroit's perimeter players smothered Cleveland's guards, jumping passing lanes and forcing tough passes in pick-and-roll actions. That flustered the Cavs and led to easy Piston points in transitions. Next, the Pistons find balance. They'll still want more offense out of Jalen Duren, 11 points on 4 of 11 shooting, but the Pistons don't need to rely entirely on Cade Cunningham, and for Detroit, that's a recipe for success. And now to the losers. Austin Reeves. Essentially, with Doncic out, the Lakers need to play as close to perfect hoops as possible to just have a chance against the defending champs. Austin Reeves is playing in just his 3rd game since returning from an oblique injury, so some initial struggles are to be expected. Los Angeles, however, cannot afford that. Next, Cavaliers' James Harden and Donovan Mitchell. Simply put, there's no way the Cavs will have a chance in this series if their top 2 scorers struggle through 3 quarters in the way they did May 5th. Mitchell showed some promise in the first half, scoring 14 points on 6 out of 11 shooting, yet he scored only 3 in the third quarter. Jared Allen's nearly early fouls cost the Cavaliers. He was arguably the biggest reason why Cleveland topped the Toronto Raptors in Game 7 in the first round. He was a force May 3rd, scoring 22 points and hauling in 19 rebounds, 8 of which were offensive. In Game 1 of the semifinals, different story. The Pistons went right at Allen in the first quarter, drawing 3 early fouls on him in the first 5 minutes and 58 seconds. That took him out of the game completely, and he finished the night with just 2 points and 3 rebounds in 18 minutes and 22 seconds on the floor. And finally, Jared Vanderbilt injury worsens the Lakers' tough luck. It's bad enough that Luka Doncic left with a hamstring injury. He remains out and may miss the entire Eastern semifinals against the Thunder. But things got worse for LA. Backup forward Jared Vanderbilt suffered a right hand injury when his fingers swiped against the left side of the backboard as he attempted to block a shot. The NBC broadcast reported the injury was gruesome and indicated that Lakers trainers had to put a towel over it to conceal the injury. The Lakers ruled him out for the rest of the game.
Turning to the life section of USA Today, Cerulean sweater gets a makeover in Prada 2 from Patrick Ryan of USA Today. It's not turquoise, it's not lapis, it's actually cerulean. 20 years ago, Andy Sachs, played by Anna Hathaway, and her lumpy blue sweater made cinematic history in The Devil Wears Prada, as the fashion illiterate assistant was mercilessly dressed down by fearsome style maven Miranda Priestley, played by Meryl Streep. The oft-quoted monologue became instantly memorable for Streep's tossed yet incisive delivery, as well as an expert way Miranda calls out Andy for her willful ignorance of fashion trends and craftsmanship. For costume designer Molly Rogers, it was imperative to pay subtle homage to the scene in The Devil Wears Prada 2. And so, in the final moments of the sequel, you may recognize that Andy is wearing a slightly updated version of the cerulean sweater as she works at the Runway magazine office late one night. The first phone call I made was to find out if it still exists, Rogers says of the original garment. It needed to be seen again, and I love that it's the last thing you see. It's full circle. As fans will notice, it's actually more of a sweater vest in the sequel, which is thanks to Hathaway. The sweater now has a deep V-neck with stylishly tattered edges, which Andy pairs with a button-down shirt and jeans. Annie scared us to death in the fitting room, Rogers recalls. She just took a pair of scissors and whack, whack, whack. She just chopped the sleeves off of it. Rogers always had planned to customize the sweater somewhat for the new movie to make it feel like it had been cherished all these years and seen some rough times, the designer says. But Hathaway's drastic rework made even more sense for the character of Andy. Her thread through the movie is feminine menswear. So this was a good place for a vest, Rogers says. It kind of put an exclamation point on that. The revamp of Andy's sweater isn't the only style Easter egg from the first movie. In the opening sequence of Prada 2, Andy walks by a street vendor in the park who is holding up 2 similarly shaded blue belts, a direct reference to the first movie's cerulean scene in which runaway editor Jocelyn, played by Rebecca Mader, puzzles over 2 different analogous belts. They're so different, she frets. Rogers also makes a less obvious reference to the cerulean scene with a Dries Van Noten tassel jacket that Miranda wears to the office cafeteria in the sequel. If you're familiar with the first movie, when she does the cerulean soliloquy, Miranda is wearing this gold coin bolero that is really ornate, Rogers said. This new tassel jacket was kind of the sister or the bookend to that jacket in the original. It felt like a good bridge. I went deep on that one. The first film's most memed accessory is undoubtedly the designer footwear Indy wears to the office after her fashion makeover. Are you wearing the Chanel boots? Yeah, I am. Miranda's new assistant, Amari, played by Simone Ashley, asks if she still has her Chanel wardrobe, but you won't actually see the boots make an appearance in Prada 2. Some things are better left untouched, Rogers says. People were asking me, are you going to bring the Chanel thigh-high boots back for the second movie? But I felt like that should live alone in its time frame. That is so sacred to me in the first movie as a moment. I wouldn't think you could do that justice by bringing it back for 2. I really did not want to touch that.
Jackson looks to share Uncle's vulnerability. Melissa Ruggieri of USA Today writes this movie write-up. A few hours before making his Met Gala debut, Jafar Jackson radiates a calmness that belies the hoopla surrounding him lately. Jackson, who's 29, stars as his uncle, Michael Jackson, in the movie Michael, the box office shattering biopic of the singular performer. Professional reviews of the film have leaned abrasive, with many taking exception to the timeline that ends years before unsavory allegations emerged about Michael Jackson. But even Michael detractors have acknowledged the superb portrayal by Jackson, the younger family member, who inhabits the role to uncanny perfection. As the film rolls toward a $500 million worldwide gross, it's clear that critical dissection is irrelevant when it comes to an entertainment figure whose music and performances were simply unmatched. Calling from his New York hotel room before dressing in Polo Ralph Lauren for the celebrity fashion extravaganza, a humble Jackson chatted about recreating the life of an icon and plans for a Michael sequel. Question. This movie has been such a record-shattering success. Did the response exceed your expectations? His answer, you don't really think of the end result because I was so focused on what I was preparing to do and taking one day at a time. But then you have those moments when you think, oh, how's it going to really play once it's released? And then, just the first 24 hours, seeing all social media posts and videos that were shared of people dancing in the theater, coming out in their outfits. I couldn't have been happier to see the joy and love that the film brought to a lot of people. It definitely exceeded my expectations. So, whose reaction to the film mattered most to you? My grandmother, Catherine. I thought you might say that. That was the one I was most nervous to hear, or to just have her see the film. But then when I had that moment where she just hugged me and said how proud she was and how excellent I did in the film, that really kind of washed everything away. That's all that mattered. Still, the highest compliment I can get is from her. Does being Michael's nephew feel like an advantage or a responsibility or both? It's a culmination of both. Having those close family ties definitely gives you a bigger responsibility going into it, but also allows me to trust my instincts even more, knowing we share the same blood. But at the same time, how do I carry that and not look at it as I'm just a family member playing a family member, and look at it as really breaking down the character of who Michael was as a human being? Was there anything about Michael that you knew from being part of the family dynamic that helped you portray him? Oh, the stories I've heard of his work ethic and how disciplined he was with being a perfectionist. It could be one single move he'd worked on for 5 or 6 hours. I always remember hearing the story where he would rehearse until he wasn't able to walk up a flight of stairs. I would take that and apply it to my own way of how disciplined I would be with my moves or working on the script, always staying curious and wanting to learn more. That's something I was able to learn from stories from my father, Germain, and my uncles who were around him during those pivotal years. Well, how long did you train? It started with the acting first. I was brought into it around 2021. Wow, it's 5 years. I know. I was working with an acting coach, Angela Gibbs, and we started working on different scenes just to see where my instrument was, where I was in my body, how comfortable I was in front of the camera, or having people look at me. I didn't get into the dancing side of it until a year after, just focusing on the acting. I had about 3.5 years of being able to live in that mindset of preparing.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:45.
And continuing, what was the hardest to master? Michael's voice, a move, a gesture? I feel like I didn't master anything. I just got as close as possible I could to where it felt believable. Every performance has its own difficulty of wanting to capture a certain energy. Billie Jean was very specific because it was staying true to that performance, frame by frame, and wanting to capture every detail as close as I possibly could without losing the feeling of it. So, what performance was the most challenging to recreate? Thriller, because there were only about 4 or 5 days to really go over that choreography. I felt very self-conscious with that one because I had so much time focusing on the Billie Jean and bad performances. But Thriller felt a little different. But I was happy being on that set and seeing the zombies. It was incredible. And you recreated the Thriller video on the same street as the original? Yeah. We shot at the exact same location and shot all through the night for 2 nights in a row. Those were probably the most incredible shooting days out of everything, just to be in that space where Michael truly created a video that would stand the test of time. What's your favorite Michael video as a fan? Always Smooth Criminal. Because of the lean. Oh, even before the lean. It's just the whole world of it, the way it's shot, the colors, the wardrobe. And then the song comes in and fully immerses you into that world. But I also love the Moonwalker short film. So what do you hope that audiences understand about Michael that maybe they hadn't before? Well, I really hope that they see the vulnerability that he carried and also the passion and the drive to strive for the independence he longed for. He had all that experience with the Jackson 5. But then he got to a point where he wanted to create his own ideas. He had a vision of himself, of course. His father, Joseph, was that person in the way of Michael getting to that independence. But Michael had the courage to take the next step. From the Michael footage that was cut, you think there's enough to do a sequel? Oh, his story's not finished being told. So it's in the early process of figuring that out. I can't wait to see what comes next. How long would it take you to get into training mode to step back into that role? Oh, definitely not as long as it took me the first time. Maybe a few months. You and your fiancée, Maddie Simpson, have been together almost 10 years. She's been so supportive of you. What are you most grateful for, having her in your life right now? Oh, always being able to come home and feel that support, to have that presence and feel the love, and feel that peace. If you're surrounded by a bunch of noise and being pulled in many directions, you want to be able to come home and be grounded and have someone you know, you truly love, who has a real deep understanding of what it is that I'm going through. I really appreciate that I have her in my life. What is next for you now that you've played someone so iconic? Oh, I definitely won't be doing another role that has any dancing or singing. Something that really allows me to transform into someone else, where it's unexpected. Just, the complete opposite of what Michael is. I don't know what that is in particular, but I'm really excited about being able to change and transform into different people.
Returning to our front section for this article, which is an opinion piece, military families must be able to trust leaders. from Rebecca Cleves Sanderlin of USA Today. She's an opinion contributor to USA Today. There's an unspoken contract the U.S. military makes with military families. Lend us your loved ones and we'll meet their basic needs. Considering how few guarantees accompany military life, sustenance is non-negotiable. So when photos began to appear in USA Today and on social media of meager and unappetizing meals purportedly being served to sailors deployed in the Middle East, people took notice. Taking care of our troops is more than just a necessity. It's a point of national pride. An army marches on its stomach. The famous saying goes, a Navy sails on its stomach too. I've been a military community advocate for more than 20 years. I've dined elbow to elbow with sailors in the galley of the USS Gerald R. Ford, where the food was plentiful and delicious. I wanted to know if something had changed, so I started asking around. I heard more stories of sailors rationing food, care packages going undelivered for a month or more, and deployed soldiers not having enough food. I had already seen posts in private military spouse Facebook groups about deployed service members not getting the pay they were due and going into debt, and I heard these stories told in desperate tones. People were eager to tell me what they were seeing. One advocate put it plainly, the military is built on trust. Leaders constantly speak about taking care of service members and their families, but when people feel they cannot safely raise concerns, the gap between those words and reality erodes something foundational. In an institution where trust is everything, that erosion isn't a peripheral problem, it's existential. My husband, a retired U.S. Army Command Sergeant Major, has a story he tells about butt pack straps, the straps used to tie down a soldier's load-bearing equipment. Early in his Army career, his infantry company's commander, a grizzled, long-time enlisted soldier who commissioned as an officer, noticed a number of soldiers had left their butt pack straps untied, which they weren't supposed to do. The company had just completed a 25-mile march and everyone was exhausted. You see that, the officer said, when a lot of soldiers deviate from the standard, it's an indicator the company is under stress. Pay attention to that. It's a lesson my husband carried with him through his 26 years of service. When people and systems, let me repeat that, when people and systems fail to do what they normally do, it's an indicator. Right now, the indicators are everywhere. Military spouses who used to be outspoken are quieter. In online military community groups, people prefer to post anonymously. During the Iraq and Afghanistan war years, there were reports of service members living in rough conditions with less than ideal food. But those reports were delivered in tones of pride, not get me out of here desperation. Excuse me. The mere fact that military family members suspect their loved ones' basic needs are not being met is an indicator. It tells us they don't trust leadership to care for their people, and the data bears this out. Excuse me once more. According to 2026 Blue Star Family's Military Family Lifestyle Survey, only 37% of active duty family respondents say they would recommend military service to a young family member. Considering that about 80% of people who join the Army come from families with a history of military service, this is a real problem. The military community feels the same sense of division that's overtaken the nation, but the stakes are higher. Troops who feel divided from their peers still have to rely on them. Military spouses who aren't sure they can trust the people sitting next to them in a family briefing also have no one else to list as their children's emergency contacts at school. When senior leaders are fired not for performance but for perceived lack of loyalty, military families literally do not know whom they can trust. I don't know if there really are problems with food on the USS Abraham Lincoln, the USS Tripoli, or any of our military ships. We have only the word of individual sailors and the word of military officials, and we don't know whom to believe. But I've toured several of our Navy ships. I've seen the tiny bunks sailors sleep in, stacked 3 high, without enough headroom for them to sit up and with only small lockers for their possessions. I know food is the one consistent morale builder for everyone deployed. For military families, parents, spouses, children, grandparents, and all who love someone in uniform, there is very little inside our control. When someone you love agrees to serve, that loved one moves beyond your reach. You rely on their leaders to take care of them. Right now, military families are not certain the contract is being honored, not just in the galleys, but in all the ways that matter. The answer isn't better food. It's leadership worthy of the trust of this community has always been asked to extend. That's not a luxury. That's the contract.
You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Thursday, May the 7th, 2026. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, please call 716-821-5555. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy.
and Ken Drost.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring.
Welcome summer with your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're planning a summer bash bigger and better than ever before. It's Friday, June 26th at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove, located at the corner of Union Road and William Street in Cheektowaga. You're invited to enjoy a buffet chicken and pasta dinner, your first drink on us, a basket raffle, and Buffalo Music Hall of Fame party band The Boys of Summer from 6 to 9 p.m. Tickets are $50 and support the 160 volunteers who read all the programming offered by Radio Reading. That's Friday, June 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove in Cheektowaga. Get your tickets now by calling 716-821-5555 extension 3 or online at nfradioreading.org. Thank you to New Era Kep Foundation, Tyverin Law, and Perry's Ice Cream for sponsoring this largest event of the year.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.